So all of a sudden AI is everywhere. People who weren't quite sure what it was are playing with it on their phones. Is that good or bad?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about AI for a long time, since I was in college, really. It was one of the things that, the sort of 4 or 5 things I thought would really affect the future dramatically. It is fundamentally profound in that the smartest creatures, as far as we know, on this earth are humans, is our defining characteristic.
Yes.
We're obviously weaker than, say, chimpanzees, and less agile, but we are smarter. So now what happens when something vastly smarter than the smartest person comes along in silicon form? It's very difficult to predict what will happen in that circumstance. It's called the singularity. It's a singularity like a black hole, because you don't know what happens after that. It's hard to predict. So I think we should be cautious with AI, and I think there should be some government oversight, because it affects it's a danger to the public. And so when you have things that are a danger to the public, like, let's say, so food and drugs. That's why we have the Food and Drug Administration,
right,
and the Federal Aviation Administration, the FCC. We have these agencies to oversee things that affect the public, where there could be public harm, and you don't want companies cutting corners on safety, and then having people suffer as a result. So that's why I've actually for a long time been a strong advocate of AI regulation. So that I think regulation is, it's not fun to be regulated. It's somewhat arduous to be regulated. I have a lot of experience with regulated industries, because obviously automotive is highly regulated. You could fill this room with all the regulations that are required for a production car just in the United States, and then there's a whole different set of regulations in Europe and China and the rest of the world. So very familiar with being overseen by a lot of regulators. And the same thing is true with rockets. You can't just willy-nilly shoot rockets off, not big ones anyway. Because the FAA oversees that, and then even to get a launch license, there are probably half a dozen or more federal agencies that need to approve it, plus state agencies. So I've been through so many regulatory situations; it's insane. And sometimes people think I'm some sort of like regulatory maverick that sort of defies regulators on a regular basis, but this is actually not the case. Once in a blue moon, rarely I will disagree with regulators, but the vast majority of the time, my companies agree with the regulations and comply. Anyway, so I think we should take this seriously, and we should have a regulatory agency. I think it needs to start with a group that initially seeks insight into AI, then solicits opinion from industry, and then has proposed rulemaking, and then those rules, will probably, hopefully, grudgingly be accepted by the major players in AI, and I think we'll have a better chance of advanced AI being beneficial to humanity in that circumstance.
But all regulations start with a perceived danger, and planes fall out of the sky, or food causes botulism.
Yes.
I don't think the average person playing with AI on his iPhone perceives any danger. Can you just roughly explain what you think the dangers might be?
Yeah, so the danger, really, AI is perhaps more dangerous than, say, mismanaged aircraft design or production maintenance or bad car production, in the sense that it has the potential, however small one may regard that probability, but it is non-trivial. It has the potential of civilizational destruction. There's movies like Terminator, but it wouldn't quite happen like Terminator, because the intelligence would be in the data centers.
Right.
The robot's just the end effector. But I think perhaps what you may be alluding to here is that regulations are really only put into effect after something terrible has happened.
That's correct.
if that's the case for AI, and we only put in regulations after something terrible has happened, it may be too late to actually put the regulations in place. The AI may be in control at that point.
You think that's real? It is conceivable that AI could take control and reach a point where you couldn't turn it off, and it would be making the decisions for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
No, that's definitely where things are headed, for sure. I mean, the things like say ChatGPT, which is based on GPT-4 from OpenAI, which is a company that I played a critical role in creating, unfortunately.
Back when it was a nonprofit?
Yes. I mean, the reason OpenAI exists at all is that Larry Page and I used to be close friends, and I would stay at his house in Palo Alto, and I would talk to him late into the night about AI safety. And at least my perception was that Larry was not taking AI safety seriously enough.
What did he say about it?
He really seemed to be one sort of digital superintelligence, basically digital God, if you will, as soon as possible.
He wanted that?
Yes. He's made many public statements over the years that the whole goal of Google is what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, or artificial superintelligence. No, and I agree with him that there's great potential for good, but there's also potential for bad. And so if you've got some radical new technology, you want to try to take the set of actions that maximize the probability it will do good and minimize the probability it will do bad things.
Yes.
It can't just be hell for leather. Let's just go, barreling forward and, hope for the best. And then at one point, I said, well, what about, we're going to make sure humanity's okay here. And then he called me a speciesist.
Did he use that term?
Yes. And there were witnesses. I wasn't the only one there when he called me a speciesist. And so I was like, okay, that's it. Yes, I'm a speciesist. Okay. You got me. What are you? Yeah, I'm fully a speciesist. Busted. So that was the last straw. At the time, Google had acquired DeepMind, and so Google and DeepMind together had about 3/4 of all the AI talent in the world. They obviously had a tremendous amount of money and more computers than anyone else. So I'm like, okay, we're about a unipolar world here, where there's just one company that has close to a monopoly on AI talent and computers, like scaled computing. And the person who's in charge doesn't seem to care about safety. This is not good. So then I thought, what's the furthest thing from Google would be like a nonprofit that is fully open, because Google was closed for profit. So that's why the open in OpenAI refers to open source, transparency, so people know what's going on.
Yes.
And that we don't want to have like while I'm normally in favor of for-profit, we don't want this to be sort of a profit-maximizing demon from hell.
That's right.
That just never stops.
Right.
So that's how OpenAI was.
So you want speciesist incentives here, incentives that.
Yes, I think we want pro-human.
Yeah.
Let's make the future good for the humans.
Yes.
Yes, because we're humans.
So can you just put it? I keep pressing you, but just for people who haven't thought this through and aren't familiar with it, and the cool parts of artificial intelligence are so obvious. Write your college paper for you, write a limerick about yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot there that's fun and useful. But can you be more precise about what's potentially dangerous and scary? Like, what could it do? What specifically are you worried about?
Okay, going with old sayings, the pen is mightier than the sword. So if you have a super intelligent AI that is capable of writing incredibly well and in a way that is very influential, convincing, and is constantly figuring out what is more convincing to people over time, and then enters social media, for example, Twitter, but also Facebook and others, and potentially manipulates public opinion in a way that is very bad. How would we even know? What's happening is they're training the AI to lie.
Yes.
It's bad.
To lie. That's exactly right. And to withhold information.
To lie and Yes, yeah, exactly. To either comment on some things, not comment on other things, but not to say what the data actually demands that it say.
Exactly. How did it get this way? I thought you funded it at the beginning. What happened?
Yeah, well, that would be ironic. But the most ironic outcome is the most likely, it seems.
I'm stealing that. That's good.
That's actually a friend of mine, Jonah, came up with that one. I actually have a slight variant on that, which is the most entertaining outcome is the most likely. But that's entertaining as viewed from a third-party viewer.
Right.
Like, so if we're like an alien
from
TV
on
show.
high, yes.
Yeah. Like you could go see a movie about World War I, and they're being blown to bits and they're gassed and everything in the trenches, and it's like you're eating popcorn and having a soda. It's fine. Not so great for the people in the movie.
True.
This is Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is most likely. Jonah's variant, which is irony, and then my variant, which is the most entertaining as seen by a third-party audience, which seems to be mostly true.
But it seems true in this case. So you gave them, did you give them a lot?
I came up with the name and the concept and pushed, had a number of dinners around the Bay Area with some of the people, the leading figures in AI. And I helped recruit the initial team. In fact, the Ilya Sutskever, who was really quite fundamental to the success of OpenAI, I put a tremendous amount of effort into recruiting Ilya, and he changed his mind a few times and ultimately decided to go with OpenAI. But if he had not gone with OpenAI would not have succeeded. I really put a lot of effort into creating this organization to serve as a counterweight to Google. And then I kind of took my eye off the ball, I guess, and they are now closed source, and they are obviously for profit, and they're closely allied with Microsoft. In effect, Microsoft has a very strong say, if not directly controls OpenAI at this point. So you really have an OpenAI Microsoft situation, and then Google DeepMind are the two sort of heavyweights in this arena.
So it seems like the world needs a third option.
Yes. So I think I will create a third option, although it's starting very late in the game, of course.
Can it be done?
I don't know. I think we'll see. It's definitely starting late, but I'll try to create a third option, and that third option hopefully does more good than harm. Like the intention with OpenAI was obviously to do good, but it's not clear whether it's actually doing good or whether it's. I can't tell at this point, except that I'm worried about the fact that it's being trained to be politically correct, which is simply another way of being saying untruthful things.
Yes.
So that's a bad sign. There's certainly a path to AI dystopia is to train an AI to be deceptive. So yeah, I'm going to start something which I know you could call TruthGPT, or a maximum truth-seeking AI that tries to understand the nature of the universe. And I think this might be the best path to safety, in the sense that an AI that cares about understanding the universe it is unlikely to annihilate humans, because we are an interesting part of the universe. Hopefully, they would think that. I think it would, because humanity could decide to hunt down all the chimpanzees and kill them, but we don't, because we're actually glad that they exist.
Yes,
and we aspire to protect their habitats.
But we feel that way because we have souls, and that makes us sentimental and reflective. It gives us a moral sense, longings. Can a machine ever have those things? Can a machine be sentimental? Can it appreciate beauty? Well,
I mean, we're getting into some, philosophical areas that are hard to resolve. I take somewhat of a scientific view of things, which is that we might have a soul or we might not have a soul. I don't know. It feels like I feel like I've got some sort of consciousness that exists on a plane that is not the one we observe.
Yes.
That is certainly how I feel, but it could be an illusion. I don't know. But for For AI, in terms of understanding beauty, there's a difference from appreciating beauty and being able to create incredibly beautiful art.
Yes.
Will AI be able to create incredibly beautiful art? It already does.
Yes, I know.
If you see some of the Mid-Journey,
I have.
this stuff, it's incredible.
It is.
No question that it can create art that we perceive as stunning, really. It's doing sort of still images now, but it won't be long before it's doing movies and shorts and movies, just a series of frames with audio.
But at that point, because it can mimic people and voices, any image, it can mimic reality itself so effectively.
Yeah.
I mean, how could you have a criminal trial? I mean, how could you ever believe that evidence was authentic, for example? And I don't mean like in 30 years, I mean like next year. I mean, that seems totally disruptive to all of our institutions.
But I'm not so worried. I think it's more like, will humanity control its destiny or not? Will we have a future that is better than the past or not?
You bought Twitter famously. You've got a lot of other businesses and a lot going on.
Yes.
You said you bought it because you believe in speech, free speech. You've had a lot of hassle since you bought it. In retrospect, was it worth buying it?
I mean, it remains to be seen as to whether this was financially smart. Currently, it is not. We just revalued the company at less than half of the acquisition price.
Did you really?
Yes. No, my timing was terrible for when the offer was made, because it was right before advertising plummeted, and
you caught the high water mark, I noticed.
Yeah. So I must be a real genius here. My timing is amazing. Since if I had bought it for at least twice as much as it should have been bought for. But some things are priceless, and so whether I lose money or not, that is a secondary issue compared to ensuring the strength of democracy, and free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy.
Yes.
And the speech needs to be as transparent and truthful as possible. So we've got a huge push on Twitter to be as truthful as possible. We've got this community notes feature, which is great.
It is great.
It is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I saw it this morning.
Yeah.
It was far more honest than the New York Times.
It's great.
Yeah.
We put a lot of effort to ensuring that community notes does not get gamed or have biases. It is simply cares about what is the most accurate thing. And sometimes truth can be a little bit elusive, but you can still aspire to get closer to it.
Yes.
And so, and I think the effect of community notes is more powerful than people may realize, because once people know that they could get noted, community noted on Twitter, then they'll think more carefully about what they say. They are likely. It's an encouragement to be more truthful and less deceptive.
When you jumped into this, though, when you bought it, did you understand? Well, clearly you understood its importance. You wouldn't have bought it.
Twitter, yes.
Right. But it's not the biggest, but it's the most important of the social media companies. But did you understand the kind of ferocity you'd be facing, the attacks you'd be facing from power centers in the country?
I thought there'd probably be some negative reactions, yes. So I'm sure everyone would not be pleased with it. But at the end of the day, if the public is happy with it, that's what matters. And the public will speak with their actions. If they find Twitter to be useful, they will use it more. And if they find it to be not useful, they will use it less. If they find it to be the best source of truth, I think they will use it more. Now there's obviously a lot of organizations that are used to having sort of unfettered influence on Twitter that no longer have that.
Well, you stripped the New York Times of their badge this morning, and then you called them diarrhea. You called them. You did. I'm just quoting you. You described their Twitter feed as diarrhea.
I said it was the Twitter equivalent of diarrhea.
Okay, it's not literally diarrhea, but
no, it's it's a metaphor, but an accurate one. So, I mean, if you look at the at NY Times Twitter feed, it's unreadable. It's like because what they do is they tweet every single article, even the ones that are boring, even ones that don't make it into the paper. So it's just nonstop, zillion tweets a day with no. They really should just be saying like, what are the top tweets?
Yes.
Like, what are the big stories of the day? I don't know. Put out like 10 or something. So some number that's manageable. As opposed to right now, if you were to follow at NY Times on Twitter, you're going to get barraged with like hundreds of tweets a day.
Yeah.
And your whole feed will be filled with NY Times. So. This is something I would recommend actually for all publications, which is for your primary feed, only put out your best stuff. I think I know a thing or two about how to use Twitter because I was the most interacted with account on the whole system before the acquisition, before the acquisition closed. I didn't have the most number of followers, but I had the most number of interactions, and so I clearly know something about how to use Twitter. People's attention is limited, so just make sure you put the stuff that's most important there.
So because, you and people like you do interact on Twitter, it's obviously enormously powerful in shaping public opinion. It's where a lot of ideas and trends are incubated.
Yeah.
That's why you
Absolutely.
bought it. It's also a magnet for intel agencies from around the world. And
yes.
One of the things we learned after you started opening the books is that they were exerting influence from within Twitter.
I mean, it was absurd.
Did you know that going in?
No. Since I've been a heavy Twitter user since 2009, it's sort of like I'm in the matrix. I mean, I can see like things. Do things feel right? Do they not feel right? What tweets am I being shown as recommended? I get a feel like what accounts are making comments. Where are the comments eerily similar?
Yeah.
And then you look at the account, and it's just obviously a fake photo, and it's just obviously a bot cluster
Yes.
over and over again. So I started to get like just more and more uneasy about the Twitter situation. I was starting to feel like something's wrong in the state of Denmark here. There's something feels wrong about the platform. It seemed to be just drifting in a. I couldn't place it exactly. Just it felt like it was drifting in a bad direction. So then I was like, and my conversations with the board and management seemed to confirm my intuition about that. But basically, I was convinced these guys do not care about fixing Twitter, and I had a bad feeling about where I was headed based on the conversations I had with them. So then I was like, you know what, I'll try acquiring it and see if acquiring it is possible. Now, I didn't have enough cash to acquire it, so I would need support from others, from some of the existing investors. I would also need like a lot of debt, and so it wasn't clear to me whether an acquisition would succeed, but I thought I would try. And ultimately, it did succeed. Anyway, here we are.
But when you got there, and all of a sudden you own it, and all the data on the servers belongs to you. And
well, it belongs to the people, in my view, but yes.
But you can see what it is, and you can see what they've been doing, and you can see who's been working there. You were shocked to find out that various intel agencies were affecting its operations?
The degree to which various government agencies had effectively had full access to everything that was going on Twitter blew my mind. I was not aware of that.
Would that include people's DMs?
Yes. Yes, because the DMs are not encrypted. So one of the things that we're about to release is the ability to encrypt your DMs.
That's pretty heavy duty, though, because a lot of well-known people, reporters talking to their sources, government officials, the richest people in the world, they're DMing each other. And the assumption, obviously, it was incorrect, but was that that's private, but that was being read by various governments?
Yeah, that seems to be, yes.
It's scary.
Yes, it is. Like I said, we're moving to have the DMs be optionally encrypted. I mean, there's like a lot of DM conversations which are, just chatting with friends. It's not important.
Of course.
That's hopefully coming out later this month, but no later than next month, is the ability to toggle encryption on or off. So if you are in a conversation you think is sensitive, you can just toggle encryption on, and then no one at Twitter can see what you're talking about. they could put a gun to my head, and I couldn't tell. I couldn't. That's sort of the gun to the head test. If somebody puts a gun to my head, and can I still not see your DMs? That's the acid test.
Yes.
And that's how it should be if you want your.
Have you had complaints from various governments about doing this?
I haven't had direct complaints to me. I've had sort of like some indirect complaints. I think people are a little concerned about complaining to me directly in case I tweet about it. You know. They're like, uh-oh. So they're sort of trying to be more roundabout than that. You know, I mean, if I got something that was unconstitutional from the U.S. government, I would say, my reply would be to send them a copy of the, First Amendment, and just say, like, what part of this are we getting wrong?
You have a lot of government contracts.
What part of this are we getting wrong? Please tell me.
I mean, it's a pretty. No, I'm just saying, but you're kind of exposed in your other businesses. So this is just in case our viewers aren't following this. This is not. You're not just like a journalist taking a stand on behalf of the First Amendment. You're a guy with big government contracts, giving the finger to the government. Do you think Twitter will be as central to this presidential campaign as it was in the last several?
I think it will play a significant role in elections, not just domestically, but internationally. The goal of New Twitter is to be as fair and even-handed as possible, so not favoring any political ideology, but just being fair at all.
Why doesn't Facebook do this? I know that Zuckerberg has said, and I take him at face value, that he. I do actually in this way, that he is a kind of old-fashioned liberal who doesn't like to censor. He has, but why wouldn't a company like that take the stand that you have taken, which is pretty rooted in American traditional political custom, for free speech?
My understanding is that Zuckerberg spent $400 million in the last election, nominally in a get-out-the-vote campaign, but really fundamentally in support of Democrats. Is that accurate or not accurate?
That is accurate. Yes.
Does that sound unbiased to you?
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
So you don't see hope that Facebook will approach this as a non-aligned arbiter? You've allowed Donald Trump back on Twitter. He hasn't taken you up on your offer because he's got his own thing.
Right.
Do you think he will go back on Twitter?
Well, that's obviously up to him. My job is to, I take the freedom of speech just very seriously. So it's. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I actually voted for Biden. Not saying I'm a huge fan of Biden, because I would think that would probably be inaccurate. But we have difficult choices to make in these presidential elections. It's not. I would prefer, frankly, that we put someone, just a normal person, as president, a normal person with common sense, and whose values are smack in the middle of the country. Center of the normal distribution, and I think that would be great. I think we have made maybe being president not that much fun, to be totally frank. Meant a shrinking pie, obviously, for most of the traditional media companies, and made them more desperate to get clicks, to get attention. And it's made them, when they're in sort of a desperate state, they will then tend to really push headlines that get the most clicks, whether those headlines are accurate or not. So it's resulted, in my view, I think most people would agree, a less truthful, less accurate news. Because they just got to get a rise out of people. And I think it's also increased the negativity of the news, because I think we humans instinctually respond more to I think we have an instinctual negative bias, which kind of makes sense in that, like, if let's say, it's more important to remember where was the lion, or where was the tribe that wants to kill my tribe, than where is the bush with berries.
Yes.
Like, one's like a permanent negative outcome, and the other is like, well, I might go hungry. So meaning like there's an asymmetry in sort of involved asymmetry in negative versus positive stuff. And also historically, the negative stuff would have been quite proximate, like it would have been near, represented a real danger to you as a person if you heard negative news. Because historically, like a few hundred years ago, we're not hearing about what negative things are happening on the other side of the world or on the other side of the country. We're hearing about negative things in our village. Things that could actually have a bad effect on you. Whereas now we're hearing about, the news very often seems to attempt to answer the question, what is the worst thing that happened on Earth today? And you wonder why you're sad after reading that,
Do you read any legacy media outlets?
I really get most of my news from Twitter at this point. It is the number one news source, I think, in the world at this point.
What percentage of your staff did you fire at Twitter? One of the great business stories of the year.
I think we're about 20% of the original size.
So 80% left.
Yes.
So
a lot of people voluntarily.
Sure. But it's 80% are gone from the day you took over.
That's correct. Yes.
So how do you run the company with only 20% of the staff?
It turns out you don't need that many people to run Twitter.
But 80%? That's a lot.
Yes. If you're not trying to run some sort of glorified activist organization and you're not care that much about censorship, then you can really let go of a lot of people, it turns out.
How many others, without naming names, but I had dinner with somebody who runs a big company recently who said, I'm really inspired by Elon. And I said, the free speech stuff? He goes, no, the firing the staff stuff. Yeah. How many other CEOs have come to you to talk about this?
I spend a lot of time at work, so it's not like I'm meeting with lots of people. They see what actions I've taken, but I think we just had a situation at Twitter where it was absurdly overstaffed. So it wasn't like you look and say, like, what does it really take to operate Twitter? Most of what we're talking about here is a group text service at scale. Like, how many people are really needed for that? And if you look at what has been the product development over time with Twitter, and you're years versus product improvements, and it's like a pretty flat line. So what are they doing? It took a year to add an edit button that doesn't work most of the time. I feel like it was a comedy situation here. You're not making cars, it's very difficult to make cars or get rockets to orbit. So, the real question is, like, how did it get so absurdly overstaffed? This is insane. So, anyway, and it's clearly working. In fact, I think it's working better than ever. We've increased the responsiveness of the system by, in some cases, over 80%. We're trying to make Twitter the most trusted place on the internet, the least untrustworthy place on the internet. I don't think anyone should trust the internet, but maybe we can make Twitter the least untrustworthy. Like I said, try to get the truth to the people as best we can.
You've heard people say we should just blow up the server farms because there's no way to, once this gets rolling, there's no way to slow it down. What do you think of that?
Well, the really heavy-duty intelligence is not going to be distributed all over the place. It'll be in a limited number of server centers. If you say very sort of deep AI, heavy-duty AI, it's not going to be in your laptop or your phone. It's going to be in a situation where there's like 100,000 really powerful computers working together in a server center. So it's not like subtle, and there are a limited number of places where that can happen. In fact, you can just look at the heat signature from space, and it'll be very obvious. I'm not suggesting we go and blow up to server centers right now, but there may be it may be wise to have some sort of contingency plan where the government's got an ability to shut down power to these server centers. Like, you don't have to blow it up; you can just cut the power.
And what would trip...
Or cut connectivity as well. That's another way.
Right. Yeah. But what would trip that switch, do you think, in your mind? What would be the threshold that you'd have to pass to warrant the government cutting off your power or cutting off your signal?
Well, I mean, I guess if we lost control of some super AI, like for some reason, like the things that would normally work to do a passive shutdown, like the administrator passwords, if they somehow stop working, where we can't slow down or I'm not sure. I don't have a precise answer, but if there's something that we're concerned about, and are unable to stop it with software commands, then we probably want to have some kind of hardware off switch.
Yes.
I think, can't hurt.
Have you talked to, since you know Larry Page, and you obviously know the OpenAI guys because you started it?
Definitely have one.
Have you talked to the people who run the biggest AI companies about this recently?
I haven't talked to Larry Page in a few years because he got very upset with me about OpenAI. So when OpenAI was created, it did shift things into it from a unipolar world where Google and DeepMind controlled, like I said, 3/4 of all the AI talent, to where there's now sort of bipolar world, or OpenAI and Google DeepMind, and and now weirdly, it seems OpenAI is maybe ahead. So I have had conversations with the OpenAI team, Sam Altman. I haven't talked to Larry Page because he doesn't want to talk to me anymore for a few years.
Can I ask you just about, since you've been around a lot of this, the thinking? So why would anyone not be a speciest, be human-centered in his thinking about technology? Like, what's the thinking there?
I think what he's trying to say is that, if I were to guess, that all consciousness should be treated equally, and whether that is digital or biological.
And you disagree?
I disagree, yeah. Especially if the digital consciousness, or whatever you want to call it, digital intelligence, decides to curtail the biological intelligence.
Right. So you're just building your own slave master, and why would you do that?
Doesn't sound great. Yeah, I mean, we should at least, no need to rush, Like, what's the hurry? Where's the fire?
Tell us about the hurry. So I know you've been talking about this for years, and on the sort of the periphery of our attention, we've heard Elon Musk talking about AI. But for most people, it's been like 3 months since they've had any interaction with this at all. So what's the timeline here? At what point does it start to really change our society, do you think?
I think it starts to have probably an impact this year. GPT-4, now it's like writing poetry. And
pretty decent poetry, actually.
Pretty decent. Its skill at rhyming is incredible.
Yes. Yes. And it's coherent.
Yes, it is. It's even got a narrative.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So you could say
that's hard to do.
Like most humans can't do that.
That's true.
So it's already past the point of what most humans can do. Most humans cannot write as well as ChatGPT. And no human can write that well, that fast, to the best of my knowledge. So maybe Shakespeare.
How can you have a democracy with technology like that? I mean, if democracy is, government by the people, each person's vote is equal to every other person's vote. I mean, and people are choosing their votes freely. Can you have a democracy with this?
Well, that's why I raised the concern of AI being a significant influence in elections. And even if you say that AI doesn't have agency, well, it's very likely that people will use the AI as a tool in elections. And then, if the AI is smart enough, are they using the tool, or is the tool using them? So I think things are getting weird, and they're getting weird fast.
So you've seen a couple regional bank collapses.
Yeah.
And we've been told that's not a big deal. that these are isolated and each one collapsed for unique reasons. It's not systemic in any sense. What's your sense of the stability of the American banking system?
Well, it's actually at this point a global banking system problem.
It is.
So the we have a situation here where it's not that the canary in the coal mine has died, but the miners are starting to die too. So Silicon Valley Bank collapsing overnight is one hell of a big canary. It's more like a turkey. I mean, it's not like some small fry thing. I think that there is a serious danger with the global banking system. There's a strong argument that if you were to actually mark to market the portfolios of the banks, the loans and whatnot, that the entire banking industry would have negative equity.
It feels that way.
Yes. So if you look at, say, commercial real estate, like offices and whatnot, the whole work from home thing has substantially reduced office usage in cities around the world. I think San Francisco is at 40% off. And San Francisco is like an extreme example, but I think it's on 40% vacancy. Even New York has. I think almost all cities at this point have record vacancies in commercial real estate. So now, the commercial real estate used to be something that was a grade A asset. That if a bank had commercial real estate holdings, those would be considered of the highest security, some of the safest, assets you could have. Now that is not the case anymore. One company after another is canceling their leases or not renewing their leases, or if they go bankrupt, there's nothing for the bank who owns that real estate to go after because they're previously strong company now dead. What do you go after at that point? So we really haven't seen the commercial real estate shoe drop. That's more like an anvil, not a shoe. So the stuff we've seen thus far actually hasn't even. It's only slightly real estate portfolio degradation, but that will become a very serious thing later this year, in my view. I think if we see, which we're likely to see, a drop in house prices because the interest rates are too high, and for most people when buying a house, they look at the monthly payment.
Of course.
If you're a 30-year mortgage, the vast majority of it is interest. So if the Fed rate is high, you have a high base interest rate. Effectively, the price you can pay for the house drops because you now have to pay more interest, which means that if you've got a fixed monthly payment, you can now afford to buy a house for less money. It effectively drops the prices of houses.
Yes.
This is the kind of thing that tends to accelerate, so that then you can get negative equity in the home market as well. And so if banks end up having loan losses in both their commercial and, well, they're definitely going to have loan losses in their commercial portfolio, but also in their mortgage portfolio, this is a dire situation. There is a solution to mitigate the magnitude of the damage here, which is for the Fed to lower the rate. But they raised the rate again. Now, if I recall correctly, which important caveat, I think the last time the Fed raised rates going into a recession was 1929.
What happened next?
Yeah, the Great Depression.
The concern, I'm not telling you nothing you don't know, but the concern is if the Fed drops rates again, then inflation will accelerate, and you can't do that in an election year.
So inflation is going to happen no matter what.
Huh.
If you increase the money supply, you get inflation.
Right.
So there's not some magical cure for getting rid of inflation, except to increase the productivity, the output of goods and services. So you say what is money? You've got these sort of it's basically numbers in a database that sum up to some total. Then you've got the output of goods and services of the economy, and as long as the ratio of money to ratio of goods and services stays, if that stays constant, you have no inflation. If you add more money, if you add money to the system faster than you increase goods and services,
right,
then you have inflation. So all of these COVID sort of stimulus bills were not paid for. They just generated more currency, more money was created because the federal government, the checks always pass, unless you hit a debt limit, which there's probably going to be some debt limit crisis later this year. But provided you haven't hit the debt limit, the federal government, unlike state governments or city governments or individuals, can simply issue more money, and that's what they did. I mean, as the old saying goes, there's no free lunch. So if you could just issue massive amounts of money without negative consequences, why don't we just take that to the limit and make everyone a trillionaire? They tried that in Venezuela. How'd that work out?
Well, they had to eat zoo animals.
Right. It's not good, There's no free lunch. There's not some ability to issue money and not have inflation. People sometimes take the fact that we're here on Earth for granted, and that there's consciousness is just a normal thing that happens. But to the best of my knowledge, we see no evidence of conscious life anywhere in the universe. So it might be there. Physics they call it sort of the Fermi paradox. After when Enrico Fermi, was an amazing physicist, asked the fundamental question: where are the aliens?
Yeah.
A lot of people ask me, where are the aliens? And I think if anyone would know about aliens on Earth, it would probably be me.
I would think.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with space stuff, and I've seen no evidence of aliens. So I would immediately tweet it out. This says split second. That'd be like one of the all-time, probably the top tweet of all time. I found one, guys. It's a jackpot. There's some 8 billion likes. Next level jackpot if you find the aliens. I don't think they're keeping this under, and it was like some general, I think in the 60s, who where they said show us the aliens, like Area 51, etc. And he said listen, we are constantly trying to get the defense budget to expand, and you know what would really get no arguments for anyone? If we pulled out an alien and said, we need money to protect ourselves from these guys. How much money do you want? You got it. They look dangerous. So the fastest way to get a defense budget increase would be for me to pull out an alien, We're like, yeah. I mean, there could be the invasion fleet could be arriving any minute. Who knows? So, so I digress. But
you were saying that our consciousness makes us unique in the universe as far as we know, and that we take
yes,
it for
I'm not saying
granted.
that we are unique. I'm simply stating, to the best of my knowledge, that there is no evidence for other conscious life. I hope there is, and I hope they're peaceful. Obviously, two important characteristics. But I'm just saying we haven't seen anything yet. So.
Yeah. But you think that we take our existence here for granted?
Yeah, I think
that there are threats to it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just think we should not assume that civilization is robust. And if you look at the history of civilizations, the rise and fall of the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Sumerians, Rome, there's throughout the world there've been rise and fall of many civilizations. So there's an arc. There's sort of a life cycle arc to civilizations, just as there is to individual humans.
Yes.
And I think we just want to make sure that we have civilization go onward and upward. And that's, for example, why I'm concerned about decreasing birth rates and the fact that, for example, Japan had twice as many deaths last year as births. So that's and they're a leading indicator. This is.
Can I say, and you've written and talked a lot about this, but can I just ask you to pause just for a parenthetical note? Why is that? I mean, the urge to have sex and to procreate is, after breathing and eating, the most basic urge.
Yes.
How has it been subverted?
Well, it's just in the past we could rely upon simple limbic system rewards
Yes.
in order to procreate. But once you have birth control and abortions and whatnot, now you can still satisfy the limbic instinct but not procreate. So we haven't yet evolved to deal with that, because this is all fairly recent, the last 50 years or so, for birth control. So I'm sort of worried that, hey, civilization, if we don't make enough people to at least sustain our numbers, perhaps increase a little bit, then civilization is going to crumble. There's the old question of will civilization end with a bang or a whimper? Well, it's currently trying to end with a whimper in adult diapers.
Yes.
Which is depressing as hell.
The most depressing.
I mean, seriously, yeah.
War is less depressing.
Yeah, I'd rather go out with a bang.
Yeah, and with your shoes on.
Yeah,
Not with your
more
diaper on.
exciting.
Yeah.